You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast with your ADHD coach and expert, Zena. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD podcast. I am riding a dopamine high right now, I gotta tell you. I'm feeling pretty awesome because I spent the weekend with a whole bunch of our Sparkly Brain friends. I was hanging out at the New Zealand ADHD Conference on Saturday. It was in Auckland, and if you were there, I so loved being there in that room with you, meeting you, chatting with you all the things. Oh my God, can you tell? I'm still riding the dopamine high. The hangover has not yet hit. What a vibe. Oh my God. And I just want to make a special thank you to some of the people who were there. So I was blown away by the amount of support people for ADHDers. So people who don't necessarily have ADHD themselves, but they support people who do, whether that be teachers, counselors, therapists, parents. There was a huge percentage of people in that room who wanted to learn more, who wanted to understand, who wanted to be able to better support the ADHDers in their life. And I just have to say that means so much. And I get very emotional thinking about that because I met so many of those people. They came up to me and asked questions and introduced themselves. And yeah, that was just incredible. So I just want to say thank you. That means so much to me and to so many of us ADHDers. It really does. So I just wanted to shout you guys out. Also a massive thank you to the ninjas. The ninjas are the people who wear the red t-shirts if you're at one of the ADHD conferences, either in New Zealand or Australia, and they are there to help to, collect tickets and check tickets and hand out workbooks and, help people find the toilets and the exits and the food and all the things. And they are incredible. And I met so many of them. And I just want to say thank you so much. It's really awesome because you guys help make the event possible. To Bethany, who ran the event and was a little stressed on the day. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. It was very well run, and I just want to shout you out and the My Spirited Child team. And Julia Ford took on the MC role last minute and nailed it out of the park. So thank you, Jules. Julia has been on the podcast and shared her ADHD story, which she actually took part in a panel on the stage talking about ADHD burnout. And she shared her story there and so many relatable things. I had so many people coming up to me and saying, oh my gosh, I'm so glad, hearing from Julia, I can so relate. And Jamie, who was also on the panel. So yeah, Julia also took on the MC role last minute. So that is so awesome. Thank you, Jules. I got to tell you guys something so funny because I had so many ADHD moments that happened to me during conference, and it was I was amongst good people and they appreciated them and enjoyed them, right? So one of the things that happened during the conference was halfway through, it was more than halfway through, right? I'd gone to the bathroom at some point in the afternoon, right? And discovered that I still had a tag on the jumpsuit I was wearing. I was wearing this black full length jumpsuit, right? One piece thing. And it still had the tag on it from when I'd purchased it a couple of months ago when I was in America. Oh my God. So I took a photo of me in the bathroom. I took a selfie with in the bathroom mirror holding up the tag because it cracked me up so friggin' much. And then I literally walked out of the bathroom. Somebody came right up to me to talk to me. And the first thing I said to her is, look, I've got to tell you because I've got to tell someone. I just found the tag on my jumpsuit. I said, how funny is that? And she just cracked up. But yeah, I then had to proceed to tell everybody that I came into contact with about discovering it. People I'd never met before, I'm telling them for the first time, meeting them for the first time, telling them about this tag, right? Because guys, small talk sucks. We don't do small talk. Shit like this connects us. We love it. All right. Another funny thing that happened is I was again walking to the bathroom, staying hydrated, obviously, but I was walking out to the bathroom and Charlotte Dawson had just finished speaking on the stage, so she spoke after me. And I was walking out to the bathroom and she was out that way speaking to another woman who was probably asking her a question. And both of them said something to me and I acknowledged them and said, thank you. And, I loved hearing you talk, which I'm actually going to share with you our takeaway from Charlotte Dawson, right? But my ADHD moment was going, after we'd kind of, chatted a little bit, was saying, hey, wish me luck, guys, because I'm just about to pee wearing this jumpsuit. Just cracks me up, right? I actually said that to a couple of people. I was like, wish me luck, I'm off to try and pee wearing this jumpsuit. And the funny thing was, right, like I had this like beautiful pink sparkly sequin jacket on, and you have to take off your sequin jacket, hang on the back of the door, and you've got to roll your jumpsuit all the way down, right? It's just such an effort. Made me think about my wardrobe choices. It was worth it. That jumpsuit was so friggin' comfy, and my jacket was incredible and sparkly, and I got so many comments, but still. That is one of the things that we often do, is what's considered too much information, right? TMI. And I fucking love it, because I always feel such a connection when somebody overshares in that kind of a way. I'm like, I love that shit. Small talk sucks. It's boring, right? So those are a couple of my conference moments. There we go. So, friends, I am going to share with you today some of the takeaways that I got from the 2025 ADHD Conference in Auckland. And these are from the other speakers, and I will shout out those other speakers and some of the people on panels, etc. And also a question that an audience member asked that really got me thinking and will no doubt spark actually a future podcast episode. So I'm going to share with you some of those takeaways, and I've got to say there's more than 5, like I'm highlighting 5, but there's a couple of other things I just want to like sprinkle in there that I think is such goodness that we need to be sharing and talking about. All right. So starting from the top, Dr. Charlotte Dawson spoke directly after me. So I was up first and then she spoke after me. And she talked about the strengths-based approach to ADHD, and I loved it because it wasn't the toxic positivity as version of it. It was like still, talking about, hey, like, yes, we have our struggles, and we also, a lot of our ADHD traits are strengths that, sometimes we don't necessarily shine a light on. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. But she introduced me to a word that I hadn't really heard in this context, and she said that one of the strengths ADHDers have is something called sublimation, right? Not a submarine, sublimation. And it is how we will find workarounds for the differences that we have or the deficits that we have, okay? How we are incredibly creative in the ways in which we will find a different way to do the thing we need to do. Right? And this is a form of resilience. Okay. So I Googled a definition because I was like, I wanted to learn more about this. And it said the psychological process of channeling the challenging impulses or emotional energy that is common with ADHD into a socially acceptable, productive, and creative outlets. So if we were to put this into understandable terms, because I don't know about you, but I kind of got lost just reading that. Like when we have a desire for, say, constant stimulation and we're seeking dopamine, etc., we can channel that into hobbies, right? Like whether it be we play a musical instrument, like we play the guitar, or we engage in sports and, we go to the gym or we go for a run or what have you. We engage in activities that provide the stimulation that we want in a constructive way, right? Rather than in a not so useful way, right? So that's one of the things that we do is we find workarounds to get the stimulation that we want in healthy ways, right? In useful ways. Also, in terms of the emotional element, right? Because it's kind of more so, the sublimation is more so in relation to our impulses that we have and our emotions, okay? But if you get really frustrated from a certain task, and you might actually turn that frustration into, hyper focus to solve the problem, right? Rather than, using it to give up, you might, turn it into something that you can use, right? As a form of a productivity tool. So I was thinking of a real life example of this for me. I remember this time I was experiencing a lot of kind of apprehension and anxiety and fear and sort of insecurity and doubt. And I was having all of these really big emotions, and I was doing something really that required me to get outside of my comfort zone. And I was choosing to do it, and I was actively no, I want to do this, and I know all these emotions are coming along for the ride. And I remember going for a run. I was like, I just need to run. Like, I just need to get it out. And I'm not typically a huge runner. I used to run a little bit more, years ago. But I just remember this day going for a run and just pushing myself to run as fast and as hard as I can. And it was like I was burning all of this energy out and producing some dopamine. And it was just a really positive, creative way to like work out the emotions that I was feeling. Right? So again, that's like one of the things that we do, and I so agree with this whole sublimation thing. I just hadn't heard the word before. You probably have, right? You might have. I totally hadn't. But it's like the creative ways in which we can channel our energy, our emotions, our differences to finding things that, support us in getting the outcome that we're trying to get, right? Anyway, I love that. I agree. I love it. Another thing I took from her, she actually said something really interesting that really got my brain ticking. And it was the things that we, often tell off say, if we were talking about ADHD kids, right? If we talk about like the little boy at school can't sit still, always disrupting everybody, constantly in trouble, right? When we refer to hyperactive ADHDers, right, especially as children, they're often told off for things like sitting still, right? Sit still, right? Stop moving around. Stop interrupting people, right? Don't talk. That's another thing they're often told off for, right? Like, don't talk, stop interrupting, blah, 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 right? Those two things alone, sit still, don't talk, are actually really healthy adult behaviors if you kind of zoom out and look at them, right? Like, movement is actually a really good thing, and moving our bodies helps us to regulate, right? Like, is such a healthy thing to do, especially as an adult, moving the body, keep moving, right? And we're working out the excess energy. We're regulating our emotions. We're helping to de-stress all of this. Like, these things that we're told off for are actually really healthy adult behaviors, right? It's the same as don't talk. Like, hey, it's a form of socializing, right? Like, we want to encourage people to speak up, to use their voice, to engage with other humans, right? And I just thought when she put it in that way, I was like, that's fucking fascinating. Right? These things that we try and put kids in this like box at school that they don't necessarily fit in, and we tell them off for things that are actually considered good, healthy behaviors as adults. Like, isn't that fascinating? Yeah. She also shared a quote from Dr. William Dodson, and I've talked about him, and I've no doubt shared this quote before here on the podcast because I love him and his work and his approach to ADHD. And the quote, I'm going to read it out, is this: ADHD is not a damaged or defective nervous system. It's a nervous system that works well using its own set of rules. Instead of a deficit of attention, ADHDers pay too much attention to everything and have inconsistent attention. So she actually shared this, I think, around about the time she had a cat slide. Right, she won me over because she shared a cat. Hi. But she shared the NICU model, right? How ADHD brains are motivated by novelty, interest, challenge, and urgency, right? Again, we've got episodes on that here on the podcast. But, I think it was actually Dr. William Dodson who discovered that. Yes, it was. He discovered that these are our motivators, right? And again, it's not that our nervous system is defective, it's that it has its own set of rules. We're motivated by things and we prioritize things that are interesting, novel to us, have an element of challenge that we like or enjoy. And they also have a deadline. That urgency element really helps our brain to, get on board and get shit done, right? But again, like, it's not that we don't have enough attention. That's such bullshit. We have way too much attention. It's just going in all these different directions, right? We're paying attention to so many different things. We have trouble knowing what not to pay attention to and, putting it in one place. Which is why I love the Māori word for ADHD, aro reretini, right? Which means attention goes to many things, okay? So again, that quote that she shared is so powerful and such a great reminder. So next up was Ashley Cairns. I've had Ashley on the podcast before talking about her burnout story because she's got a really powerful burnout story. I met her for the first time at last year's conference a year ago and we just hit it off. She's my people. I love her. So her presentation was on triumph over burnout. Okay, ADHD burnout is a topic we talk about often on this podcast because it is real and it is rough. And, it is such a tricky thing to navigate and come back from. So if you don't know Ashley, if you have not had the pleasure of seeing her speak or meeting her, she is the meme queen, my friends. Her slides are full of memes and everyone's constantly laughing. I've just been and shared some of them over on Instagram because holy shit, the meme queen for sure. Like ADHD memes. I love that one of the things I love about ADHD is like our ability to laugh, especially like laugh at ourselves and laugh at like memes and like speak. Like sometimes our love language is like sending memes to each other, right? Our humor is epic, I reckon. So what Ashley did is she shared about burnout, and I'm going to share a couple of things that I took from it. But also she had a panel where she invited on Julia Ford, who was the MC, who's also been here on the podcast, and a woman named Jamie Rose Peacock, who I had not yet met before, but Jamie's going to come on the podcast because she does employment law, and I wanted to talk about the accommodations for people with ADHD in the workplace, right? We need that. Yeah, we do. So anyway, she had this panel where a couple of women got to share their own experiences and their stories of burnout and what they learned, their takeaways, all of that. It was phenomenal, and it's going to be redone in Christchurch, and I'm going to be on it this time. I can't wait. Okay. So one of the things that Ashley shared was the difference between stress and burnout. Okay, so I'm going to read from one of her slides. Stress involves too much pressure, like too many pressures that demand too much of you physically and mentally. Okay, burnout is about not feeling enough, right? Being burned out means you feel empty, or you feel this constant lack of motivation or a lack of care. Also, she referred to the word that I often associate with burnout, which is apathy, like just not caring, just no drive to do anything, but also not caring about anything, even things that typically would bring you joy. Okay, so I love that she talked about those differences and how to spot them. One of the things that was talked about is how one of our primary contributors to burnout is our work. Now, as people with ADHD, we often have to work harder than other people, right, in order to produce the same amount of results. That's not always the case, but sometimes we feel like we're working twice as hard behind the scenes, and that is true for us, or that can be true for us. But one of the things we try to do often in our workplace is we try to, especially women I see this with, we try to perform, we try to please, we try to, do well. Now, when we perform well at work, we are rewarded with more work. Like that. Just that sentence was like, I've heard it before, but the light bulb went off in my brain. Like, what the fuck? And it got me thinking, okay, we have, and I want to acknowledge I'm very fortunate, very privileged to be able to have a cleaner come in. We have a cleaner who comes into our house, and she comes like roughly every week or every 2 weeks, and she comes in and she cleans for 2 hours. Fellow ADHDer, which I love. And when she comes in and cleans, she initially, we were paying her to clean for 3 hours because we have, a 2-story house. We have 3 boys. Oh my God, the amount of mess and dirt and stuff that they create. Oh my God. But anyway, we only have them 1 week, 1 week on, 1 week off, right? So we started paying her for 3 hours, and the place got really clean and up to standard real quick. And then we dropped it back to 2, which has been going really, really well. But one of the things I've observed, and this is really fascinating, is that instead of staying now for the full 2 hours to do the things she would typically do, right? She would do, say she cleans the kitchen, she then cleans the bathrooms, she vacuums and mops the floor, that sort of thing, right? Just a basic house clean. That used to take her, initially we started with 3 hours, we dropped it back to 2 pretty quick. And then now it takes her, I would say, just over an hour and a half. And what's interesting is we pay her for 2 hours, but after her, say, hour and let's say 40 minutes, she will go. Once she's finished what she needs to do, she will leave. Now, the interesting thing about this is that my partner's we pay her for 2 hours. Shouldn't she stay for the 2 hours and do some other things skirting boards and windows and other things that would be really good to get done? And I was like, yes, that would be great. However, I said at the same time, we're paying her for the results that we've asked for. We've asked for her to do these things, and it used to take her longer. Now that she's done it multiple times, she gets quicker and quicker, which is typical of all of us in a job, right? when we're first learning a job, it's like, oh my God, so taxing on our brain and it requires us to think. And then we kind of switch it on to autopilot and it doesn't take us as long to do it. So we do get quicker at it. And then when we get quicker at it, we are rewarded with more work, right? And it got me thinking, like, is that the way we want to operate here? Do we want to have this conversation with her and do that? Because it's not really promoting the sort of thing that I want to promote. Like, and look, I haven't got to a solution here, but I just wanted to share that as an example because that's what we do, right? When we first get into a new role, a new job, right? It takes us a while to learn the ropes, to learn how to do it. So initially it takes us quite a bit longer. Then we get quicker at it and we get rewarded with more work. But then like life happens, right? Sometimes she might come in and I don't know, say the kids have sprayed some shit all over the shower and it's going to take her twice as long to clean as normal, right? So then, what was taking an hour and 40 minutes now takes 2 hours, but we'd already increased her workload. So instead of it taking 2 hours, it might take her 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like, is that really fair if we're only paying for 2 hours? Right? Do you get what I'm trying to say here? Like, I think I'm just going to leave it there. I feel like I could go off on such a tangent, right? But it's just so fascinating to think about how when we do well at work, we are rewarded with more work. What if we paid people for the results and the outcome that we need them to create? And if they create that in 2 hours, great. And if they create it in an hour and a half, fantastic, right? If it takes them 3 hours, oh shit, like they need to work on how to make some alterations to try and rein that in. Do you see what I mean? Like, I hope you do. It's got my brain all twisted up now. Anyway, let's move on from that. Another thing that Jamie talked about was like having reasonable workplace accommodations. Now, she didn't really go into that because, they were really pressed for time in this panel, and trust me, they could have kept going and we would have all loved that because it was so gold. But again, I'm going to invite her on the podcast. We've already talked about her coming on to talk about, what are reasonable workplace accommodations that we can ask for as people with ADHD, right? Because that would be so good to know. And I've had that question come up recently in my membership. What are my legal what's my legal ground as somebody with ADHD who right now physically cannot work, right? And I've been signed off medically. And I was like, oh, such a good question. So, okay, we're going to get an expert. Come on, tell us all about it. One of the things that Julia said on this burnout panel was like energy vampires. I love that term, right? Knowing who the energy vampires are in your life and make sure that you spend less time with them or, are aware that if you do spend time with them, you will come away feeling like you are drained, right? I'm not sure who said this, but somebody said, I wasn't a crybaby, it was RSD. Boom, mic drop. I always thought that I was such a crybaby growing up. And when they said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It was RSD. Whether it was in a workplace and you're getting some feedback about your performance that's hard to take, right? It was me at school as well. Like I was at school and navigating between changing classrooms and moving into a classroom with like the older kids and going from having female teachers to this male teacher who I thought was so scary. And he tried to throw a ball at my head one time. But anyway, another story. Right. I remember like I cried for like days when I was in that classroom at the beginning. Like my mum was sitting next in the class with all these kids staring at me as I cried, trying to adjust. Right. It was wild. But again, like, if you thought you were a crybaby or you are a crybaby, like it's not that, it's RSD, it's the rejection sensitivity, right? It's our difficulty in navigating any rejection, criticism, failure, any feelings of attack, anything like that. And that's our body's response, is to cry, which is actually a way we try to regulate our nervous system, right? Our body's trying to help us, but we're always like, oh my God, not fucking now, right? So again, I also thought about, and I wrote the question mark with my notes, like, what about shyness? I was the shy kid growing up. I've heard from so many others who were that shy kid growing up. Was our shyness also, part of the RSD, part of the way in which we try to protect ourselves from the sensitivities that we have in that regard, right? Something that Jamie said on this burnout panel was, I don't live a disordered life because there is something wrong with me. I live a disordered life because I have a disorder. I feel like enough said. I thought that was very, very, very powerful, and I think that a lot of people will resonate with that. We had to share it. We had to share it outside of the conference, my friends. Next up was Vanessa Lever. So Vanessa Lever did a presentation on strengthening executive function skills. One of the things I loved that she shared as a tip was to use a playlist as a timer, right? And I thought not only as a timer, but like a form of body doubling as well. So just doing a short one. So in terms of a short playlist, you're talking, say, 2 to 4 songs, right? And this would be really great for kids and adults. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to do it, but like 2 to 4 songs, okay? And imagine if you were to use this for your kids as a morning or an evening routine. And in the morning, they have those songs that they have added to their morning playlist. And when those play, they have a specific set of activities they've got to do. It might be they get into their uniform for school, they pack their lunchbox in their bag, they make their breakfast, they empty the dishwasher, right? Like they've got 4 things that they need to do while those songs are playing. And I love how this speaks to our brain, right? Like if it's songs that you love and you enjoy, right? Like it's important you pick them or your child picks them if you're using it with your kid, right? But you're speaking to like the novelty and interest part of the brain, right? But also to the challenge, because in my brain immediately was like, I wonder how fast I could do it. Like, could I do it before the last song even plays, right? Like there's the challenge or the urgency. So again, speaking to our brain's motivators and really incorporating them, I thought that was a really cool tip. Then we had Kenrick Smith, who, shout out to Kenrick because he's a Papamoa local. He literally lives just around the corner from me. He sees me walking most days. I walk past his house almost every single day, which cracked me up. But anyway, he talked about how to use meditation and mindfulness. And he shared this one line that had my brain going, damn. And it was this: I was 37 years old before I ever felt calm in my own mind. Right? And oh my God, I so could relate to that because I was 36. It was a certain medication I got for my ADHD that was the first time I had ever felt calm. And I know I've talked about it on the podcast because when I shared that with my psychiatrist after we did the meds check in like a month after taking it, I cried. I got very emotional, right? And I still do because I went 36 years without ever having that feeling. Now, he uses mindfulness and meditation to help him get that, maybe in combination with meds. I never asked him that, but he uses mindfulness and meditation, and he talked about active ways to do that. This is what I really loved, is like often we attribute like mindfulness and meditation with having to sit still and try and get all of the thoughts out of your head, right? Like, you know, I think about like sitting there with like your middle finger and your thumb touching and your legs crossed going, right? I can't do that shit, right? Like it just doesn't work for me. And if it works for you, fantastic. But I love how he offered other ways to help, you know, create that kind of mindfulness and meditation, which is literally proven to help our brains in so many ways, right? But things like, you know, sitting on the beach, listening to the waves and just running the sand through your hands, right? Like that. It could also be walking. He referenced, you know, seeing me out every day, walking, right? Like walking, getting out in nature. These are forms of mindfulness and meditation, right? But I love how he brought it back to talking about the TPN and DMN, okay? Again, we've talked about them a little bit on the podcast, but I just want to break it down a little bit more because it's really good to know and understand. The DMN is the default mode network of the brain, okay? So this is the part of the brain, like if you just think about it like, this is like a switch, right? So when you flick the switch, you're in DMN. When you flick it down the other way, you're into the TPN, right? Like you can flick between these two modes in the brain. So the default mode network, right, is the part of the brain that's active when our mind is like daydreaming and like, you know, thinking about what you did last weekend and imagining what you're going to do in the future and all of that, right? Like it's kind of like an autopilot, right? Now, for our neurotypical friends, our friends without ADHD, their DMN, default mode network, gets pretty quiet when they need to focus on a task and get shit done, right? A little bit different for ADHD brains, okay? The task positive network, all right, the other side of the switch that we flick into is what's active when we're focused, when we're doing shit, when we're, you know, solving problems. It's the, you know, get shit done network, right? Now, for neurotypical friends, people without ADHD, that TPN, right, takes over nice and smoothly when it's time to focus, right? They flick between one switch to the other nice and easily, right? In ADHD brains, Doesn't quite do that, right? The DMN, the default mode network, which is the creative part of the brain that loves to daydream and remember the past and that thing you should have done or shouldn't have said, etc., right? Like, it likes to stay active, right? So when you should be flicking into the TPN, the task positive network, to get shit done, right? This other part of your brain is like, oh fuck, I still didn't do that. Oh shit, I haven't. Why did I say that? Why did they look at me like that? They hate me, right? Your brain's still doing that when it's meant to be getting shit done. It's like the light switch is still like flickering. That's how I think of it, right? Another way you can imagine it is, when this DMN, this default mode network, keeps butting in with random thoughts, daydreams, worries, ideas, memories, all of that, right? It's kind of like having the TV on in the background while you're trying to read, right? And the TV's on really, really, really loud and it's flicking between channels, right? Like, it's that constant interference that makes it really hard for you to focus on what you're doing, right? So he then took us through, Kenrick, shout out to Kenrick again, he then took us through this, this scrambled my brain, right? This exercise where he had us look at this image on the screen. Now, this image was using different colors. So there was like red, blue, green, yellow, orange, purple, something like that. And it was a variety of colors, but then the words on the screen were different colors. So for example, and I struggle to explain this because I struggled to fucking wrap my brain around it, right? The word purple might have been in a green color, right? The word red might have been in a yellow color. So it says RED, but it's in yellow, right? The letters are in yellow, okay? And the activity is that you go through and you say the color, not the word. Oh my God. Like, honestly, I couldn't even look at the slide. My brain got so scrambled. So what happened was we went through the slide, like this whole room full of people, they're going through it. And then he had us do this mindfulness activity. And then we went back through the slide and he actually had a volunteer do it and timed it. And it went from like 1.5 minutes down to 30 seconds. So it was, if we can use these activities, they can actually help us to switch between these two regions of the brain. So we can help to shut down that default mode network that's worrying about what so-and-so said to you, what you've got to do later, etc. You can help to quiet that, shut it off to make getting shit done easier. It was a very powerful demonstration, I have to say. I really thoroughly enjoyed that, and I have invited Kenrick to come on the podcast because he's got some gold nuggets to share with us for sure. All right, my friends. I did have an amazing, one of the ninja volunteers, he came up to me, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but it was so awesome to meet you. He came up to me and said, I love your podcast and I love the length of your podcast. And I was like, yes, I know, right? Me too. Like, I love them being shorter, etc. And I was just looking at the time going, oh shit, they're longer. It's longer today. Because sometimes my brain will like look at a 2-hour episode because I love like Stephen Bartlett, for example, and sometimes like I'm a human fan as well, but like I look at it and go 2 to 4 hours, holy fuck, right? So I know I'm taking longer just to tell you this, but I appreciated what he said. I appreciate them shorter too. All right, but a couple more things. One thing that a question that somebody shared was, how do I understand my daughter's struggles when I myself don't have ADHD and she is constantly saying to me, Mum, you just don't get it? And this woman was like visibly struggling. I didn't get to speak to her myself, but like I felt that. And it was really nice to hear someone else say that, because typically I hear from so many of us with ADHD and how desperately we wish the people in our life would understand what it was like for us and would understand ADHD and things like RSD when that can be really crippling and difficult for us. But for somebody else to feel just as passionately and adamantly that they wish they could understand, I cried. To hear that woman say that, I cried, because it made me realize that there are people in our life who desperately want to understand, who want to know how to support us, who want to know how our brains work so that they can, understand and love and support us as best as they can. And that, even though I don't know that person, that was so fucking, I don't know what's the word, heartwarming to me. I was like, thank you. I was so grateful to hear and see that, because it can be really hard when people around us don't get it. And sometimes when it seems to us like they just don't want to get it, that they don't care. right? So I just wanted to show that there are people out there desperate to know and understand. And I just, again, I'm so happy to hear that and see that. It did get me thinking though, like if you think about, if we take it away from ADHD for a moment and we think about, somebody who has cancer, if you have cancer and you go to a doctor who, I believe it's an oncologist who will treat you for cancer, right? That doctor doesn't have to have had cancer to be able to help you with treatment and going through and, supportive avenues and what to do, what not to do, etc. They can still be compassionate and help you with that journey and help you to get well, etc., right? But the truth is, if that doctor, let's say it's a him, right? If that doctor has not had ADHD, he himself hasn't had it, he will never fully understand what it's like. Even if he has had cancer, he may not have the type of cancer that you have. So his understanding would still be different. It would never fully be the same as you and your experience, right? Because we are each so unique. The way I have ADHD is different to the way that you have it and the way that they have it, right? So it got me thinking, like, it is really hard when other people don't understand. But if somebody doesn't have ADHD, the reality is that they will never fully understand. And even when someone has ADHD, their experience, while like we get it, our experiences are still going to vary, right? Anyway, I just wanted to share that because it was very nice to see how somebody on the other side, on the outside, was fighting so desperately to want to come in. Yeah, I thought that was beautiful. We also had, the last thing I wanted to share, there was a really beautiful conversation I had with some of the ADHD community around the changing of the name of ADHD and how it's so deficit based and how we would like to change that, and how, it's more, I think, around changing the association of ADHD and what that means and what that looks like, and instead of having it like a very black and white thing, making it more colorful. So yeah, I won't go too deep into that because I'm mindful of time, but also just coming back to aroreratini, right? The Māori word for ADHD, which is so beautiful. Somebody suggested, well, why don't we say ADHD aroreratini instead, and kind of put those together. So I just want to plant that seed. I think that there's a bigger conversation that would be awesome to be had here. But I think the reality is, like, if we can't change it in the diagnostic statistic manual, but the more we have these conversations, the more we talk about them and have conferences and, so have these conversations, the more we can educate people about what ADHD really is and what it is for us and how varied and colorful it truly is, right? All right, last thing I'll mention, if you are in New Zealand, the Christchurch ADHD Conference is happening on Saturday the 6th of December, 2025. Tickets are on sale now. You can get them. It is through My Spirited Child. I'll pop a link in the show notes as well, so you can do that. I'm going to be there. I cannot wait to see more of our sparkly brains and connect with more people in our community. Love hanging out with you guys. It's so fun. I will also be on Ashley's I don't know what words I put together there. I'll be on Ashley's panel talking about my burnout experiences and stories and lessons and all of that. Yeah. All right. That's it, my friends. Riding the high from the conference. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to this episode. Huge, huge love. Have a beautiful day. I'll speak to you soon. Hey friend, if you want some more help navigating and thriving with ADHD and some help applying everything that you're learning here on the podcast, then head over to our website, navigatingadultadhd.com.